Ooh, went the wind and out went the lights and the five little pumpkins rolled out of sight. All right, this is Funny Like Clown Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth. We got October 27th, 2020. And what episode is this? That's a good question because we're cruising right along. I'd say we are episode 83 right now. And here to discuss, one of the big legends of the comedy scene. Yeah, I don't know what to say about this guy. He's like, what do you say about a guy who paved the road in comedy, man? I mean, you want to talk about of iconic people, Richard Pryor brought you the, dirty comedy. He was the icon of that. Sam Kinison brought you the shock comedy. Well, if you want to tap into the dark comedy world, and this is the guy, Bill Hicks, man, Texas comedian. We're going to get into a whole lot about Mr. Bill Hicks here. As always, the person that'll bring that to you, or the people that'll bring that to you, G Vegas buffalo sauce for the spicy, sweet, savory taste at game time. Only one G Vegas available at www.gvegas.webs.com. You can order some on there, get it shipped to your house, and you never got to go grocery shopping for buffalo sauce because you can get it shipped right to you. Convenient. And originally, I was going to come do a live Halloween podcast, just sitting on my nice Halloween shirt for you looking at home, right? However, I went down to the haunted Victorian mansion that's here in Gardner, Mass., one of the top 5 haunted places in New England. And they've had ghost hunters and everybody else been in there looking for ghosts. And I got down there, and unfortunately, it's right on a main road, so no matter where I set up, you were going to hear traffic driving by and weren't going to hear my voice. And October's hit. It is colder than a witch's tit outside. Had I sat out there for a half hour, 45 minutes in a podcast, I'd be a frozen Dennis Wirth from Funny Like Clown Podcast, not just Dennis Wirth from Funny Like Clown Podcast. So I'm back here in a nice warm studio, and I guess that's where I'll be for the rest of the winter here until time's over. I did get a nice little picture for those of you tuned into the video portion. There's me by the Victorian haunted house. So if you see anything haunted going on in the picture, well, that's why, because we were at the haunted house earlier today, scoping it out, and decided, hey, the studio is a much better place to talk about comedian Bill Hicks. Famous for doing comedy on social issues, religion, politics, philosophy. He'd make you think, okay? He wouldn't just tell jokes. He'd use jokes to make you think. And making you think, hitting these hot subjects, religion, politics, philosophy. He became known as a controversial comic, known for his dark humor, okay? If you're on the comedy scene and you do dark humor, that's humor that, you take people places where they don't want to go, and you try to make it funny. Not everybody's into that type of humor, but it's a very honest type of humor because, we're all good and bad, and we all got some good in us, we all got some bad in us. Nobody's perfect. And, it comes down to you want to be, a club comic, okay, where, you go up to one of these big clubs and they have these mics for, comics coming up, and you can go in there and do them, and you get 5 minutes. You can be as dark as you want because you're playing for a little bit of crowd and some other comics. Then there's your, your suburb comic, I guess we'll call them, where you're playing at VFWs and Elks Club and Eagles Clubs, where now you're getting into where the crowd that come out in the suburbs are in their 50s and 60s, and you can't be doing dark humor there, so you're never going to work those rooms. So you can work for free doing dark humor. Hope you get discovered, possibly, make a go of it. I mean, it's happened. Who are you playing for here? So if you want to be a paid comic, you got to work clean. If you don't care about getting paid and you want to hit the big time, you do the dark humor, you hope you get seen, get on TV. And there's an underground following, and I guess that, Bill Hicks, he's probably the top underground guy. There's a huge audience for that type of humor. It's not always the people who got the most money in the world, but there's a huge audience for dark humor. And how did he get to that point? Well, at 16 years old, he started out at the Comedy Workshop in Houston, And I'll tell you, there's meccas in the world for comedy. If you go out to California, it's the Comedy Store. That's where all the legends got their start. You know, if you come here to Boston, it goes back to the Ding Ho Chinese food restaurant. That's where all the Boston legends got their start. Go down to New York City, Dangerfield's Comedy Club, the Young Comedian Specials. That's where all the legends got their start. Well, if you go to Houston, the legends of Houston comedy, they all started at the Comedy Workshop in Houston, and that's one of the meccas that just kicked out some huge comedians out of that area. Let's see. In the 80s, he toured the United States with multiple TV appearances. However, his most success was found overseas in the UK, where he had a huge fan base. Did a 1991 tour, filling some large venues by himself. And, you know, if your name Bill Hicks is selling tickets in large venues, that's where you stay. You stay in the UK because that's where you're making money to do what you love to do. Aside from comedy, he did gain some recognition as a guitarist and a songwriter, going back to his high school days and some singing roots. And very short-lived career, unfortunately. February 26, 1994, he died of pancreatic cancer at the age of 32. And man, 32, your life's just getting started at 32. And as we got to wonder with, you know, a lot of great comedians, what would he have went on to do? I've always wondered that with Sam Kinison. What would he have went on to do? It's like I wanted him so bad to be in a movie, you know, be the main character in a movie because he was so brilliant and, you know, Rodney Dangerfield's Back to School and his comedy. And he wouldn't make a bad movie. I remember they had him signed up to do A-Took, and it was such a bad script, and the whole thing fell apart, and they ended up suing him. But he said he wouldn't make a bad film. You go to Hollywood, make one bad film, nobody else will come calling. So you better hit it out of the park. You know, you don't get a second try in Hollywood. You get one try. You better make the most of it. You know, I guess after his death, I mean, he was never appreciated in his own time. He became more of an icon after his death, as a legendary comedian after his death. Then, you know, he was 10 times as big after he died than he was when he lived. You know, you're never appreciated when you live, okay? When everybody goes to your funeral, then they appreciate the brilliance you had, you know, but nobody will pat you on the back of your life and say, hey, good job. I remember the music band, the Eagles, had the same thing, you know. They put out Hotel California, which was a big hit at the time, then they broke up, and just the resales of those albums after they broke up gained them a whole new wave of cult following, next generation fans, where the fans ultimately demanded it from listening to those albums that they had to get back together. The money was just too big not to. And, you know, this was Bill Hicks. After he passed away, he became a legend of comedy. Where he was alive, he was, you know, good comedian, but not the legend he was after his death. Then they appreciated his work. 2007, Channel 4 voted him number 6. Then the following year was the number 4 on the greatest comedians of all time. 2017, Rolling Stone had him at number 13, greatest comedian of all time. And the list I used for this podcast, Comedy Central, had him number 19 on the greatest comedians of all time. And if you're considering that's of all time, there's been a hell of a lot of comedians, man. You're coming in at number 19. That's really saying something right there. You made a name for yourself. Some of his comedy heroes that he looked up to that inspired him to want to start was Woody Allen and Richard Pryor. And, you know, some big names of the day back then. And he said he used to imitate Woody Allen at school for friends, you know, and tell some of his jokes. And I did that. Me and a bunch of my friends, we used to hang out at a donut shop here in Gardner when we were young. And we were out hanging out in the parking lot. And I started telling some Sam Kinison jokes. And they didn't know who Sam Kinison was. It was before he was popular. They weren't really into comedy. And, you know, I'm going off telling Sam Kinison routines in the parking lot. They're thinking, I'm cracking everybody up. They're thinking it's me thinking of this stuff off the top of my head. It was just me reciting some Sam Kinison jokes they hadn't heard. So, but that's how you get started, you know. Let's see. He began telling jokes about his family's Southern Baptist beliefs. Which, you know, you do what you relate to. If you grew up in a Southern Baptist family, then that's what you can relate to. That's what you're going to tell jokes, because that's what your life was up to that point, you know. I know, you know, there's a lot of gay comics in the Boston area here, and they talk about what it's like to be gay, because that's what they know. That's what their life was, you know. That's what they can relate to. I do the child support superhero, because I took the class, and they said, what can you relate to? And I knew all about paying child support. It was driving me insane, and telling jokes about it really helped with that. It was good for my mental health, because my mental health wasn't too good on unfairness of family court. So you talk about what you can relate to. He related to being a Southern Baptist fan, the Southern Baptist family, and poke fun of it. Poke fun at his father, mother, brothers and sisters, what he found funny about it. He said it didn't make him reject religion. He still believed religion. He explored, different ways to express his religion. I think meditation was one that he tried out. As we said, he started at a very young age, 16, 17. That's young to start comedy. You go in a comedy club and you're there with, full adults. And his parents started to worry about his rebellious behavior, at 17. And they took him to a psychiatrist. And I guess they talked to the psychiatrist after it was over. The psychiatrist pulled him off to the side and he's like, hey, listen, you can keep coming back if you want, but it's not you, it's your parents, okay? So psychiatrist is pretty much telling him it's not you, it's your parents. You're okay, all right? There's nothing wrong with having a sense of humor about things, and that's how some people deal with it. Some people keep it bottled up inside and they don't ever let it get out and it drives them nuts, and some people talk about it, and I get in trouble with my big mouth sometimes, but it's therapeutic. If I can't figure something out, I'll put it out there, and maybe somebody give me something I didn't think about and help me think about it. Well, why are you talking about that? Because that's how I deal with it. What am I going to do? Keep it inside my head and let it confuse me the rest of my life? Or, well, you shouldn't talk about stuff like that. Well, if that's what works for you, good for you. If that ain't work for me, then respect who I am, and I do things the way I do them, and you do the things the way you do them. That's what makes the world go around, baby. Let's see. Probably my fondest memory of him here, he was one of the original Outlaws of Comedy, which originally started out the Texas Outlaws of Comedy, and that's when he was in with, Bill Hicks, Sam Kinison, Carl LeBove, all the legends were back there. That's why, they all started down at that comedy workshop in Houston, man. And, I think it's like, it was a dry cleaner and comedy club. It's not there anymore, but just like the Ding Ho, it ain't around here in Boston anymore, but that's where the legends started right there. That's where he developed his act, 1980s in Houston. Let's see. Now here's where he starts getting his big break, okay? 1987, he was asked to appear on Rodney Dangerfield's Young Comedian Special. That was on HBO, and there's so many meccas for comedy. I know Comedy Central was the big one. Everybody wanted to get on there. Well, it's still around. It's going to Netflix now. Netflix is kind of taking over. Back then, it was get on, the late night with Johnny Carson. But the thing is, when you hit TV, you had to be clean, okay? It's kind of like why Howard Stern went from regular radio to Sirius, okay? Because he couldn't do what he wanted to do on regular radio. So he went to pay radio, and he could do whatever he wanted. The chains were off, you had a whole new audience. And that's the same thing with HBO at the time. What you couldn't do on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, you could now do on HBO. Even they said about Sam Kinison and dark humor like Bill Hicks, Okay, Bill Hicks is a dark comedian, okay? What do we do with him? You can't put him on TV. What do you do with him? Well, now you can put him on HBO. You can show the brilliance of dirty and dark comedy. And, man, he took that and really ran with it. From there, he moved to New York City, where he became a professional stand-up comedian out there. I mean, once you're on the Young Comedian Special, everybody on TV seeing you, the clubs are dying to get you in there. Now you can do it and work for a living. In New York City, he said he performed over 300 times a year, which if you consider there's 365 days a year, that means the guy's getting 65 days off. 300 of them he's performing comedy. And I don't care how much you love comedy, that's a lot of work, man. And I remember he joked about that in one of his skits. Yes, I'm in a new town. I'm doing the same routine over for the 100th time, and it's my job to put a smile on my face and act like I'm enjoying it. But it's a lot of work. It's not just fun. It's a lot of work when you're a professional comedian. He openly talked about his use of recreational drugs like LSD, marijuana, and mushrooms. He was known for being a chain smoker. That actually became like one of his callings in comedy, where who's the chain smoking comic, and it was Bill Hicks. And Dennis Leary, was later on kind of stole that image from him, and we'll get into that later in the podcast, where they had a big falling out over what they did. 1988, he actually signed a pro manager. Okay, so he decided, doing 300 shows a year, you need somebody to manage that for you. Okay, that's not your local, I'll take care of it myself type of thing. You need somebody booking all these things, because you got to book ahead, you got to know where you're going, you got to have the dates set up, what you're getting paid, and it's just too much to do while you're performing at the same time. So when you hit that level, you got to get a manager to take care of those sort of things for you. Led to a 1990 album, Dangerous, back when you make comedy albums. Now it's comedy specials. They don't do albums anymore. Video, Sane Man and Relentless, HBO's One Night Stand, which that was the big one. I know they get the half-hour comedy special now. That's on Comedy Central, I think, the half-hour comedy special, but HBO was the One Night Stand. That was where they gave the up-and-coming comics their own, short-lived comedy special before they got to do their own mainstream comedy special. Also, the Montreal Comedy Festival, Just for Laughs. And let's see, released a double CD, Salvation. That's a heck of a lot of comedy back then, man. If you can fill one CD with brilliant work, that's saying something. You got a double CD, that's an awful lot of material, okay? You can burn through material quick, and that's why the big shows, they all have writers on the big show, because you couldn't possibly write every single night jokes. You get burnt out. You need some help doing that. Let's see, 1992 he dabbled into music, recording, do some stuff with a high school friend who was a musician, and did gain some recognition. He was actually a decent guitarist and musician, and I guess every musician wants to be a comedian, and every comedian wants to be a musician, so that's just the way it goes. But moved from New York to LA in 1992. He opened for the metal band Tool in 1993. Where the band said they shared Hicks's ideas, and they appreciated his comedy, where he was trying to send a message, not just doing comedy, but he's trying to make you think about all these race, religion, and disease and stuff you're not supposed to talk about, but he's trying to be get you thinking about it, where he said if we took all the money we spend on war, okay, we could feed all the homeless, and all the homeless people, give them a home and feed them all. Instead of sending that money on the military, for 1 year, we could solve that problem. But we're so much more. The militaries get such a high buzz, and we forget about the homeless. Was the message he tried to get by through his comedy. And he made you look at yourself. How do you? How come you're not doing something? How do you think about it? What's the government putting in your head as opposed to what you're actually supposed to think? Let's see. I remember here. Gabriel Iglesias said that he got hired to do a gig in the Middle East, and he's like, give him a ridiculous number. They'll say no. Well, they had enough money, they met his ridiculous figure, and they flew him out to the Middle East, and the government told him, if you step off that plane and they say you're our slave, we can't get you back. We got no international treaty with these guys, so, you got to decide if you want to go or not. He decided to go, and he said they treated him great, and they said that they were using comedy to bring peace to the Middle East. So, I mean, that's bigger than us all. You got a big peace to the Middle East through comedy. That's bigger than any of us, and that's why, because you can get a message across by making people laugh, and that's why I came up with the character, the child support superhero, because while I got you laughing about it, I got you thinking about how just unfair this family court system is, that, children don't need to commit suicide, and parents don't need to commit suicide just so family court can line their pockets with your money, okay? You need to give mom and dad back raising their kids rather than leave it up to the family court anymore. Let's see. The band Tool actually dedicated their triple platinum album to Bill Hicks. Put a nice message to him in the notes on the inside of the CD, and they talked about him, as another dead hero in some of the songs. So, I mean, a lot of people paying tribute to this guy for the work that he did, and everything. The message he was trying to send. He was trying to make people think and laugh at the same time, to try and heal the world of all our ills and the way that we look down on things rather than to help things out. And certainly it's a better way to go to help in life than it is to put people down. Let's see. 1984, he got what every comedian's dream would be. He got invited to perform on Late Night with David Letterman. Went on to do many appearances on there. And, the first appearance he did, NBC, had a rule, no handicap jokes. You can't make fun of the handicap, It's one of the top 3 in comedy. No real jokes about race, religion, or disease unless I have cancer. Like, I can't make fun of someone with cancer because I come off looking like a jerk unless I have cancer. If I have cancer, now I'm making fun of myself. That's acceptable. But it was considered a hot topic. He had a joke about putting his friend in a wheelchair accidentally, but they wouldn't let him use the word wheelchair, and he really had to, work in his head how he was going to twist around and get away with the joke without saying the word wheelchair, which takes away from the joke. It's the essence of the joke, but you're on TV. you got to work around these things. It's not like the freedom of doing a show where you can just speak openly and do what you want. Let's see. October 1st, 1993, he was invited to do the late night show with David Letterman again. And in editing, they actually censored his entire set, saying that religion and anti-born jokes were unsuitable for TV, and I remember he said that where they want Bill Hicks to come on TV because he's becoming a hot topic and he's such a hot topic he really don't have to be on TV. Then we're going to invite him on TV and tell him don't be Bill Hicks. It's like, well, you can't have a guy who's famous for being a dark comedian then put him on TV and tell him, yeah, don't be dark. It's like, well, that's not what made me popular. That's not what people are tuning in to see. But it's a different game when you hit TV. You got to play by the rules. So I guess they wanted him to come on, not be him, and went back and forth. He did it. They ended up pulling the entire set. They wouldn't show. He never returned after that, never talked to him again. And I remember after that set, he said, I saw a documentary on him. He said he called his friend after that set, and he's like, I finally did it. I finally got the message across, because he got to do what he wanted to do on TV, and he knew how many people were going to see it on late night, and he finally, he got what he wanted to do in comedy across on TV, and they ended up pulling it off. And that's just crushing for any comedian when you finally get to do what you want to do. You had a killer set, you said it the way you want to say it, and they refused to air it. It had to be just amazingly depressing. 2009, after his death, Letterman had Bill Hicks' mother on, and actually he aired the uncut version that many years later. Apologized to his mother, saying, I was wrong for doing that. I should have let it air. And, get the truth out, You should never be afraid of the truth, okay? Even if it's not what you want to hear. The truth isn't always pretty, but it's still the truth, even if you don't want to hear it. So, what are you going to do? He got very offended by a then friend and a Boston guy, Dennis Leary, for lifting subject matters that Bill Hicks felt were his subject matters about jokes, and Dennis Leary put it on an album. Now, this isn't unheard of. Robin Williams and Milton Berle, both, famous comedians of their time, both were known for being notorious joke thieves. Rumor has it Robin Williams got his ass kicked at the back of the Comedy Store a few times by other comics for stealing their jokes, but it was said he'd steal a joke and make it better. Like, wow, that's funny, but you know what? If I added my twist on it, I could make it 10 times funnier. Really shitty thing to do, steal somebody's premise or idea. Having said that, there's only so many premises. It's not unheard that two comics will come up with the same premise, going to a coffee shop, how many comics have done, you can't claim that as being your premise because there's been so many jokes on it. That's everybody's day life every morning. You go to a coffee shop, so it's like an open premise. What's your twist on it? But if you get a real good idea nobody's heard of before and somebody else steals it, that's shitty, but not unheard of. Like I said, that's a thing you have to deal with in comedy. People stealing material. It's been going on since the birth of comedy. And actually, I took a comedy class and I read a book, and I forget who wrote the book. It's a famous comedian, and she was talking about, when you start out in comedy, you have no material, so you're going to start mocking the comics that you appreciate, and you're going to start, putting little twists on their jokes, and that's how you come up with your own stuff. You twist their joke around, rewrite it a little bit, it's your own, and you do that to get some laughs until you come up with your own material. Then you drop those and you tell your own material. And that's how most people get started, okay? So when you start recording them on a comedy album, now you've hit a whole nother level of joke thievery right there. And, Bill Hicks actually joked about it once. A reporter asked him, how come you quit smoking when you were known as a chain smoker? He's like, oh, I did it just to see if Dennis Leary would copy me and do it too. So it's like, he wasn't appreciative that Leary was allegedly stealing his jokes and material. Famous Boston comedian Lenny Clark, he actually was on the roast of Dennis Leary, and he made a joke and said, hey Dennis, there's a carton of cigarettes out back with a note from Bill Hicks that says I should have gotten these to you sooner. And they actually cut that out of the roast. It was so cutting edge by Lenny that they wouldn't even let it air in the roast. They had to cut it out because it's a known thing where three other comics, famous comics, they also accused Dennis Leary of stealing the jokes and their persona. There was actually a club coordinator at a famous comedy club. That's the coordinator. That's the person who takes care of the comics and tells them, you're up next. This is what you do. Sit here. Where you go. This is the green room. Blah blah blah. Well, after Dennis Leary did his set, came off, and she ran up to him and said, that's Bill Hicks's joke you just told in this club. And he didn't say nothing. He just had a wide look on his face, and then he walked briskly out the door. It's like he knew what he had just did, I think, and rather than talk about it, I'm just going to leave. I did it, but welcome to comedy. It's a dirty business, and if you ain't ready to get dirty, get out. Dennis Leary, he's got millions in the bank, and, if stealing somebody's routine gets you millions in the bank, then I don't know too many people who wouldn't do it. So it used to be I guess, what was the old saying? This is before the internet and stuff. The old saying was, a joke was anybody's joke until you could get seen on TV doing it. Once you were seen on TV doing it, that became your joke. Until then, any joke was anybody's. That's how it worked back then. So, different time. Nowadays you put it on YouTube. YouTube will date it. You can always go back, say this is my joke. I came up with it first. Back then, you couldn't do this stuff. You heard a good joke, you could lift it. But I've heard of comedians, famous comedians, big-time comedians, they'll go to these young comedian shows and watch them, and they'll approach these young comedians who've done nothing in the world, and, hey, I'll buy that joke off you. I'll pay you for it right now. Give them money. These are famous comedians. Take that joke or premise and use it as their own, and welcome to how it works in comedy for a lot of these big names, because if you like something and you got the money, you can go ahead and use it. Let's see. I don't know, man. Bill Hicks, he was one of the first guys to have that bad boy image, the bad boy of comedy, the Houston Outlaws, dress like an outlaw, act like an outlaw, to be the bad boy of comedy. I guess he was one of the originals that started that image, and many copied him. Not many could duplicate him, but fans didn't have a whole lot to say. Geez, I thought they'd have more to say about Bill Hicks, but let's check out what the few fans did chime in and have to say about him. Let's see. Jason Chamberlain. First time I heard Hicks was on a Tool album. Today, a young man on acid realized that all matter is merely energy condensed to slow vibration, that we're all one consciousness experiencing self subjectively. Life-changing for me, okay? I mean, he's talking about some deep, deep shit right there. It's like, what are you talking about? Then you think about it, and when you can make him think, then it's like, wow, that's pretty deep what he's talking about. Pretty dark what he's talking about. But it's to get it stuck in your head. I remember the first night I did comedy, it was like, I had them cracking up, but half of them after the show, like, what the hell was up with that guy? I'm like, well, 10 years from now, who are they going to remember? The people they simply laughed at, or the people you walked out going, what the hell is up with that guy? They're going to remember that guy. That's what's going to get you remembered. So, what's going to stick in their mind the longest? What can you tell them that they're going to go, oh, that's why I shot comedy, because it's stuck in your mind forever. You didn't laugh for one night and forget about it. You got remembered. Ned Rice, when he crushed on Caroline's 1990 or 91, and everybody knew that they were witnessing a star being born. And yeah, Caroline's one of the comedy clubs in New York City, and so he made his bones, man. 300 shows a year out there, and you can see it happen. If you follow these comics enough, you can see something magical's happening here. And let's see, Tim Lazan writes into the heckler, I'm drunk, cunt. I got carte blanche. I can do whatever I want, okay? Yeah, when you're the guy with the microphone, they came to see you. They didn't come to see the drunk in the crowd. So that's why hecklers never get too far in comedy, because they didn't come to see the heckler. They came to see you. Bill Hicks, one of the original outlaws of comedy. Geez, man, legendary, comedian, opened the door for dark comedy, Many have followed in his footsteps. I mean, you go to any comedy club in any town and see these 20-year-old kids, and they're not doing Bob Hope clean stuff from TV. They're doing Bill Hicks dirty comedy and dark humor, and That's the next wave. I know what Anthony Jeselnik. He's a young comedian doing some really dark stuff, and yeah, I do it, and I don't make apologies for it. I say, yeah, I did it. That's your thing, great. If it's not, move on to somebody else. And what opened the door for him to do it? Bill Hicks started out with the dark comedy. Things you weren't supposed to talk about religion. He talked about it in a dark way. I remember one of his jokes. I think everybody wears a cross to remember Jesus. You think if Jesus come back, so he wants to be reminded of a cross. I think it's the last thing he wants to think about. But now that's dark to be talking about Jesus like that. But it's what it's what's going to stick in your head. Whoa, can you believe he just said that? Sam Kinison, yeah, he grew up in the ministry, and that's what he told jokes about was the ministry because he knew his life, and half of his act was making jokes about Jesus' take on the world when he was Jesus, and he said half the crowd's laughing and half the crowd's going, oh my God, I wish he'd stop telling the Jesus jokes. How can I ever be saved if I hear this? Hey, it's comedy. It's the last of the art where you can say whatever you want, be whoever you want. People are getting offended, and if you get offended, get offended. It's comedy, and you can make fun of everything. Because if we didn't laugh in life, where would we all be? We'd all be driven crazy. You need laughter to keep it from being drove crazy. We all need laughter in our life. Laughter is the best medicine. Be a Bill Hicks. Don't take no shit from the industry. Do what you love to do. When they tell you, you be the person we want you to be, you say, screw you, I'm going to be the person I am. That's what's going to get you the furthest in life. Keep laughing. Tell a joke tomorrow at work. Even if it's a dark joke, tell a dark joke. They'll go, oh! And you know what? 10 years from now, they're going to remember that joke that you drilled into their head with shock because that's shock humor. And the king of it was Bill Hicks. This is Funny the Clown Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth. Happy Halloween. This was the Halloween special. And, if you're going to do a dark Halloween special, we're going to do a dark comedian. It was Bill Hicks. Thank you guys for tuning in. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. Funny the Clown Podcast. Who's your favorite comedian? Go online and you can find me doing a review about them, and it's always fun to talk about and listen about the people that make you laugh the most in life. Till next week, I'll be making you laugh about somebody else. Stay laughing. Good night, folks.